sound department at Blizzard Entertainment is responsible for everything you hear, not only in all our games, but in the cinematics and the movies, the web, the marketing materials. Our main tools of our trade are music and dialogue and sound effects. These are applied across 3 very well-known game franchises that are all very different. It's really been a pleasure to work on this latest expansion of World of Warcraft, which is the Cataclysm. Sound is an amazing tool for not only enhancing the gameplay, but also telling story. There are different types of ways we can communicate with sound. Some of it's very direct, like when the NPCs speak to you.
This is the beginning and the end, mortals.
Some of it's non-verbal. The sound effects themselves or what they might tell you about what is happening or might happen to your character in the game. Then there's the atmosphere, increasing the depth and the breadth of this world and suspending your disbelief. One of our most important tools is silence. It's really important to know when not to use sound, just as it is to know when to use sound. The music in World of Warcraft doesn't play all the time. It, in fact, materializes out of the ambient sound effects background. And it plays and it reinforces where you are. And after the music plays, it doesn't just usually end with a bang. It recedes back into the ambience, so that the line between the music and the ambience is a little gray. Sound designers often say that if you've noticed the sound, that we've probably failed on some level. Unless, of course, it's something really big and epic. Musically, this expansion is so big that in order to meet our goals, we brought in a couple of more composers to help us with all of this. So in addition to myself and Derek Duke, who has worked on World of Warcraft from the beginning, we brought in Neil Acree, who has composed the music for the past 2 cinematics. And we brought in David Arkenstone, who is most famous for having written some of the tavern music and also the Argent tournament music. What I'd like to do is invite them all to join us and talk a little bit more about what inspires us, how we work, and I'm sure each person's answer will be different and interesting. So let's join the rest of the composers. How do you approach music for World of Warcraft? How do you even begin to write this stuff?
Just looking at images and playing through the game, I'm looking for what emotion somebody might be getting.
It seems like there are a lot of themes that people really love and maybe we shouldn't be messing with.
Yeah, well, I don't think you'll hear anything messed with too much, and if it has, you might hear a newer version, just a refresh of that same theme. The technology we were using back then, we didn't use a whole lot of real instruments. It's kind of been a chance in this expansion to see some of that come to life in some different, more robust arrangements.
Some of the themes, especially the big city themes, have gotten a bit of a refresh, not in changing the melodies, but in using more live instruments.
I put a group together to do music for all the taverns. We got to record that live with acoustic instruments, and it was pretty exciting. Trying to get knowledgeable about all the races and what kind of music they might have and what might be in their tavern. You know, it was pretty real.
I think the music is almost one of the characters in this game.
That's one of the ways that I think that the music in WoW kind of reaches beyond its original meaning in the context of the land or the zone or the story. And you remember, like, this is the music that I was hearing when I was supposed to be cramming for my exams or when my wife was pregnant or whatever, because that music permeates you so much while you're playing, it takes on a meaning outside of the game. I try to crystallize as much in my head before I get to the computer and the keyboard, because my tendency is if I attack the keyboard, it will lead me in a direction that I didn't have in my head, and like, oh, that sounds good and that sounds interesting, but it's a little farther away than what I had in mind. So I try to come at it with that and then spend the time, you know, editing in the computer and preparing things for the orchestra or whatever else.
Lyrically, I was going to mention that all of us have been using lyrics from within the languages of the game. The creative development team at Blizzard wrote some lyrics for me that were translated into the languages that were appropriate. That gives a whole extra layer of depth.
I also think one of the strengths is that, well, there's certain tendencies to it all sounding like Warcraft. At the same time, there are so many cultures and so many different races, kinds of people, different influences, that the fact that we don't have one composer writing all the music for the World of Warcraft, there's something in everybody's personality that seeps out, even if you're taking somebody else's melody and repurposing it. That lends a depth to the culture of Warcraft music.
When you get to really get into a zone and really make that zone come alive through music, it's a unusual opportunity, I think, in this world.
Well, very well said, and I guess we're in concert here of saying, see you all, see you all in Azeroth.